raking over the coals, I'm sure, of what happened in Turin will be front and centre of that podcast. Miracle, says the Dutch newspaper. By contrast, apocalypse, the Corriere dello Sport. Contrasting reactions. We were all wowed by that young, vibrant Ajax team. But in Turin, very different sort of reaction. Mina, I was struck by your tweet right at the end of the game. Really a raw tweet you set out. Juventus, where was the anger? Where was the physicality? It was almost like they were playing against the world's greatest team, you said, and yet it was Ajax. So now how do you feel 48 hours later?
Well, I kind of just finished mopping up all the tears from that night. But I think, look, in the face of it, we have to come to terms with one thing, that this Juventus this season haven't had an identity. They haven't had a style of play. You can't really define the way that they play. And you know what? Even last season, they were relying too much on individual players coming through for them at the right moments. And you started seeing the fragility of their play under Allegri for the first time, really. Last season in the Champions League, they conceded 3 goals in Turin against Real Madrid. And of course, they managed their comeback, but it always seems like they need to prepare for a comeback because they didn't look that great against Spurs. They needed about, to be fair to them, they needed about 15 minutes to come back into that game and win it. But all in all, they haven't really been playing fluent and cohesive football now for 2 seasons. They thought the missing link was to bring in Cristiano Ronaldo. But what the missing link perhaps is to just get back to playing as a team, all fighting and not needing to concede so many goals to produce a comeback when it matters.
So bottom line, Mina, does this now become a disaster of a season for Juventus?
Well, it's been the most disastrous in Allegri's tenure. Every season that he's been there, he's won the double. So he's won the Coppa Italia and the title, obviously. This season, he's going to win the title. He only needs 1 more point. But the fact that he's been knocked out of the competition despite being given Cristiano Ronaldo, the fact that they were knocked out of the Coppa Italia, the fact that they seem to be playing without personality, without fluidity, without any sense of really belonging, I think for them, this has been the worst season yet, and despite all the investments made.
Well, they're going to win the title, aren't they? But will it be much of a celebration if they win the title?
Look, there was one game in particular that kind of shows you the potential of what Juventus could be and can be. And that was the second leg against Atletico Madrid, where there was plenty of that intensity and physicality and that urgency that perhaps Mina was referring to. There was plenty of that in that match. But the problem for Juventus is that they don't do that often enough and with enough consistency. You don't expect a team like Juventus to be outplayed in the middle of midfield and manhandle and beat down the way that they were in the midfield by 3 players in La Sessione, Van de Beek, and Frankie de Jong, in a way that you just don't simply think of Juventus teams being that vulnerable. The strength of Juventus for many years, of course there's been solidity in the back line, but then you've had a physical presence in the midfield and then the ability to connect passes through the midfield. There wasn't any of that against Ajax, and they made Ajax look like a tremendous team with all sorts of ideas, with movement with and without the ball. And the concerning part for Juventus is that there was never a response. There was never a physical response. There was never a mental response. And in the end, they just let Ajax do whatever they wanted to do.
Do you think there could have been an arrogance and underestimation of Ajax, where they just sort of poo-pooed them and thought, oh, we'll just run over them? I think that sort of comes into it. It is quite remarkable when you do see the likes of Mandzukic when he's through the middle, when he's playing, you know, that power that he's got upstairs. It just frees Cristiano when he was playing on the left-hand side, coming inside on his right peg. You would think, as Ali quite rightly has said, with the creativity that they had in the middle of the park and that defensive solidity, you'd think that they would go on and on and on. I most certainly thought that they would. But to win the Scudetto is a bit of a letdown.
What's your sense, Mina? Is there some arrogance involved in this equation? Did they think they were going to be able to turn Ajax over relatively easy? Is this a team that are now just past it?
Actually, this is something that we do discuss in the Serie Awesome podcast, because it does seem like now that they understand that they have Ronaldo, they can sort of look to him to almost resolve a lot of matter, a lot of situations for them when it becomes a little bit difficult. But what I think is also extraordinary is that for a team that has been quite powerful in the Champions League, for them to mentally capitulate when they conceded the goal is something not really befitting of a big team. And that's what worries me the most. They lack so much quality in midfield. They've invested so heavily in their forward line. But yet when you look at it, they have really only one on-the-ball player, one player who can actually keep possession and perhaps deliver a pass. And he's not the most consistent one in Miralem Pjanic. If you look at Emre Can and Blaise Matuidi, you think to yourself, is this really the midfield that has the quality to deliver for Cristiano Ronaldo? And Antonio Conte once famously said that Juventus are a mediocre side unless they're running at 200 kilometers per hour. But you would think that with all the investments that they would have made, that they would have gotten a few players who can actually provide for the front line. But they haven't. You
mentioned a couple of players there, and I was going to ask you, are there any particular Juventus players that have really disappointed you, Mina?
I think Paulo Dybala has been one that's disappointed me for a few seasons now, because it seems like he can easily be scared off the ball. He doesn't know how to impose his game, and there's no real role for him. We know that he's one of the most talented that there is, but it seems like he doesn't fit into the strategy. Hopefully it was going to come through with him and Ronaldo, but it hasn't. Douglas Costa's been in and out of injury. He's a player who can produce a lot when he's on the ball, but he's not a consistent presence. And then you look at Miralem Pjanic, again, wonderful when he is at his best. But the fact of the matter is in certain matches, he can disappear. He can be completely anonymous. And when you have one player on like that in midfield who does know how to deliver a pass, then you need him to be awake and alert and able and capable at all times. And sadly for me, he hasn't been.
A couple of Champions League ago, we saw Paulo Dybala making the difference for Juventus against Barcelona. And it felt like that was going to be the moment where he took off, where that trajectory was going to be an upward one, and now the world was open for him, that there was no limit to what he could achieve. And that never really happened. Yeah. He never really did take off. And in fact, you can make the argument that he has taken steps back to the point to where in this game, he's taken out at halftime. In a decisive moment where you need creativity in the attack, where you need somebody to score a goal or provide a final pass or create something for Ronaldo or somebody else, Paulo Dybala, it was chosen to be out.